So Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is making his first official visit to Canada next week, and there's speculation that he's looking to Canada to provide them with liquefied natural gas. German Chancellor Scholz visited Canada in August, seeking liquefied natural gas as well. But the response that he got from Ottawa was, "Don't count on it." I think in that case, the Liberal government questioned whether those terminals could be profitable or built fast enough to make a difference to Europe's long-term supply difficulties. So all of this was before Nord Stream was blown up in
Yeah.
September. So I got to ask, what do you think? I mean, obviously that's got to change the equation. Should Canada be in the business of exporting liquefied natural gas?
I try not to use the word should because everybody is going to come at this from a different point of view. I can
Sure.
tell you that the business case has improved drastically because the Russians are one of the world's major exporters of LNG, both from the north, excuse me, from their northern coast in the Arctic, as well as from the Sakhalin projects. And those are all going to go down for lack of foreign partners and tech. So you take that offline and the business case improves. The desperateness of the Germans in specific and the Europeans in general, the business case improves. And if we have a follow-on dust up in a place like the Persian Gulf, then we're looking at Qatari natural gas potentially falling offline as well. So that would suggest again that the business case will improve. But you know Canadian internal politics better than I do. If you want to bring the natural gas from Alberta, and let's be honest, that's where almost all of it is. If you go east, that's a lot of provinces that can say no for whatever reason that they want. And even if everyone says yes on day one, you still then have to build the liquefaction facility and the pipeline, and that's a multi-year project. That's not going to be soon enough to help the Germans. Now, if you go west through BC, that wouldn't take nearly as much time. And that, because the Japanese are not facing a acute crunch, they've got a little bit more time that they could, in theory, get by without it. One thing about the Germans is they have systematically shut down one part of their energy system after another. And so they're now completely dependent on lignite and natural gas from Russia. Now they've lost the natural gas. So Germany is now one of the most carbon dirty countries on the planet. Japan's different. They don't have a unified grid. Every city has an LNG import facility, a coal burning facility, what little green tech they can get, and they have some tidal stuff, and they have LNG import facilities. So each one is used to shuffling things around. And if you can throw LNG into that mix, they will all do better, but it's not as critical as it is for the Germans. But mostly the Japanese have more time.
A lot of the opposition to LNG export pipelines in general comes from the environmental risks, the environmental concerns. How do you think about the differences between the environmental risks of LNG versus oil?
Well, natural gas, if you're going to burn it for power, as a rule, generates roughly half of the carbon that a coal plant will. So in terms of net increase, if you just look at the German case where they're burning lignite, it's a lot more than that. So, that's a gain. What's the best way I can say this without deliberately pissing everyone off? The environmental push to get rid of all fossil fuels in most places is actually increasing our carbon footprint. If you're in a place like Germany that doesn't have good wind potential outside of the North Sea and no good solar potential anywhere, putting up solar panels actually increases the amount of carbon that you're putting into the system because they're never going to generate enough power to pay it back down. In addition, Germany only gets sun for a few weeks of the year in the summer when everyone's on vacation. So when you're actually doing the hard work of living and working, you're going to be running off of something that has to run either at night, which is peak demand in Germany, or at a time when the sun's not shining very bright because it's the winter. So you're never going to get rid of the fossil fuel in the nuclear-based system. And if you build another system on top of it that doesn't work very well, you're just putting more carbon into the system. Now, that story is different in every part of the planet. If you're in a sunny location like, say, Southern California, by all means, for God's sakes, do solar. If you're in the Great Plains or the Prairie Provinces, do wind. It's brilliant. But you've got to match the technologies to where you are. And one of the advantages of liquefied natural gas is it's the lowest carbon fossil fuel and it's portable in concentrated form. And for most parts of the world, that is actually the greenest fuel source that you're going to be able to hope to get.
That's super interesting. So back in August, when the Germans came to Canada asking for LNG, our natural resources minister told Routers that the government now thought the best solution was to export hydrogen, not LNG, specifically because the world is moving away from fossil fuels, as he said. And I'm curious, what do you think of the logic of that? What do you think of hydrogen as a fuel source of the future?
Hydrogen is new. So it's difficult to project what it's going to look like in 10, 20, and 30 years, both from a cost and a carbon point of view. But what we know right now, with the technology we have now, it is the dirtiest fuel source on the planet. Making hydrogen using something other than natural gas as the feedstock means you're using carbon dioxide, oxygen, and water. And those three molecules are the most stable molecules that we are aware of on this planet. So the amount of energy that it takes to break them into something else in order to form methanol and then get hydrogen is the most exothermic reaction that you can do at scale. So anyone who's doing hydrogen with today's technology is actually just setting up a massive carbon bomb. Now, the theory is if we build out more and more and more wind and solar in places that are both windy and sunny, then the energy is free, and it doesn't matter how much energy it takes in order to generate those reactions. But there is no place on the planet right now where that exists, and there is no place in Europe at all that has the wind or the solar potential in order to do this at scale, except for maybe Scotland. And now we're wrapped up in Brexit and the Scottish independence movement. It's just there just aren't many places where this works as we understand the technology now. Now, you change the technology, and 20 years from now, it will obviously look different. I will reserve the right to change my mind. But right now, that would actually make our carbon problems far more intensive than they already are.